welcome. This is Things I've Learned. We have Amanda here. Can you give just a little bit of background of who you are, your ethnicity?
Yeah. So I'm Amanda. My last name is Smith. That's my married name, obviously. My background, or I guess my ethnicity, is I'm Mexican American. I was born in Phoenix in the 80s, the late 80s. It's a little different. I always have trouble being when people are oh, what are you? No, but I am Mexican American. I was born in Arizona, but I was adopted, and my parents are white. So that's always an interesting layer there.
Yeah.
Background, work-wise too, or?
Yeah. What's your position and kind of what did you graduate in?
Yeah, so I graduated with a degree in communication with a BA with an emphasis on public relations. It's been so long. Public relations, and I minored in Spanish.
I don't think I knew that.
No?
No, I don't think I knew you did PR. That's cool.
Yeah, well, I don't do that now, but
that's always how it is.
And then I have a digital marketing certificate from Georgetown that I did a couple of years ago. And so I work in digital marketing. I work for a nonprofit. It's a national affordable housing nonprofit in the marketing department on the digital marketing team, which is kind of funny because I feel like all marketing is digital these days. And I specifically work with email marketing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I didn't know that. I have an email marketing background too. So that's fun. Oh, cool. So what kind of got you from doing public relations to now kind of in digital marketing? What was your shift?
Yeah, so I did PR for my internship in college. I interned at the Children's Museum of Atlanta. When I finished school, a little bit early. I should have graduated with the crash. I somehow got out a year early. So I still had a little bit of trouble finding a job. I worked at the library, the county library where I worked all through high school. And then a friend of mine was working at a digital marketing agency in Atlanta. I think they're now Moxie, but they were Spun Logic back in the day. Oh. And so she had two positions. One was a project coordinator, I think, and the other was for a behavioral research person. So basically what we would think of as UE back in now for 2007, or user experience in case someone doesn't know what UE is. So I took that one, to be honest, because it paid a little bit more. And so I did that. So I did a lot of writing surveys, doing research, doing web audits. Okay. Our agency really focused on building websites. So it was the beginning of Web 2.0. So updating those 90s websites to, Web 2.0.
Something prettier.
Yeah. So I did a lot of the, auditing what they had, making recommendations, writing surveys, conducting user focus groups, making recommendations, things like that. I really enjoyed it. It was kind of sciencey, nerdy, but also still that marketing creative side. And then I took a little break after the crash. The crash happened. My job was safe, but I was a little freaked out, and I ended up going to Brazil for a year and a half where I learned Portuguese fluently. I came back and the market was bottomed out. It was even worse.
I met you, I think, right after that.
Okay. Yeah, that's where we met, because it was at the law firm. So I took a job as an administrative assistant making, I don't even know, a fraction of the money I was making before. Yeah. And the people were great. I met you, I met Austin, who I ran into randomly a couple months ago. No, a few months, longer. It feels like a couple months. Yeah, but it was just it wasn't enough money. It was just kind of to keep me afloat until things kind of recovered. So I moved to Utah. I took a freelancing gig doing translation for the agency I worked for before. So it was a lot. I think the client was Cisco, and it was for the Internet of Things, which is now ubiquitous. So I started doing translation for that, while I was also working at a brokerage as a luxury second home community in Park City helping with legal. Yeah, so
I did not know any of this.
No? Yeah.
Yeah.
It paid really well. It paid what I was making before the agency, which helped a lot to, pay down debt, save money, move out on my own again because I couldn't before. And then I got a flat tire and I went in this business to ask for help, and it was just like this startup in Park City. And the guy took one look at me and he was like, "You look like you're good with social media. Are you good with social media?" And I was just like, I think I was 24 or 25. And I was like, well, yeah.
You're like, everyone's good at social media right now.
Like, do you need some help with it? Like, what are you doing? Because he was older. So he was starting a company that looked at consumer reviews and like social media posts to kind of like let companies know what consumers are actually saying. So he asked if I wanted a job, and I was like, sure. So
that's awesome.
I had that freelancing gig on the side. So at one point I had like 3 jobs, but I was single, so it was fine. Yeah. So yeah, then I got married. My husband was in the Army, so I had to move to Fort Hood, Texas, which is in Killeen, which is a town that wouldn't exist if it weren't for Fort Hood. There was no way. I knew there was no way I was going to get a job in Killeen. Like, the closest would be Austin, and Austin was like an hour and a half away.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So luckily, my remote gigs, well, 2 of my gigs were remote kind of anyway. And then my full-time job doing legal for real estate, they worked with me to make it remote for a while.
Oh, that's awesome.
So yeah, I did that. And then my husband got transferred to Fort Meade, right outside DC in Maryland. So we moved here, and I continued my freelancing. And then I got pregnant and I had my son, and we decided that, I wanted to be around for like at least his first year, maybe 2. Like he was so little. He was a preemie. And so I think when I saw him, I was just like, oh my gosh, you're so little. Like, I can't leave you with somebody. Like, you're like this big. Which is a huge privilege that I was able to do that, especially in such a high cost of living area. So right about the time I was thinking about getting back to it. And the thing with digital marketing in particular is that it moves so fast and it changes so fast. And so a year and a half, 2 years with a baby was already kind of a card stacked against me. But so right about the time I was ready to go back to work or try to get back into work, I injured my hip pretty badly and I needed to have surgery. So by the time I finally got what I already knew was the issue, it was almost a year that I had the issue and had surgery. And so then I had recovery time. So I couldn't rehab my hip and work. Like, it was impossible. So I just didn't work.
Well, sitting, that probably wasn't helpful.
Yeah, like sitting, I couldn't sit. I couldn't
up and down.
stand up and down, the pain a lot of days. Like, I just couldn't. It was hard enough having a toddler that, I couldn't figure out how to make it work. So again, I was lucky to be in the position to not have to. But then the election happened, and my husband was in the Army, and he was probably going to get out anyway, but there was no way in hell that he wanted or I wanted him to stay in.
Yeah.
So he would be getting out of the Army in 2018 in October of that year. So at the end of 2017, I started looking for jobs. And also in 2016, I started my program at Georgetown so that I could show people, I have this gap, but I'm going to school and I know all this new current things. And I haven't just been idle. So I completed my program that spring. I started looking for jobs again, at the end of 2017, really seriously in 2018, at the very beginning of the year. And no one would hire me. It was really demoralizing.
Yeah. Well, especially you're I have all this experience. I
Uh-huh.
know what I'm doing. I took this time to like do this certificate also to even like vamp it up more.
Yeah. Yeah, so at this point, I guess it's 4 years
Hmm.
of a gap. And because of like that I'm an older millennial, like all the weird job hopping because of the market crash didn't look so great either. So yeah, like I had trouble even getting callbacks for like entry level, and I knew I wasn't entry level. So I actually reached out to an old colleague, and he referred me to a career coach. Her name is Briar Dotery. I think I'm saying her last name right. She's actually based in Atlanta, so all of our
That's good to know.
yeah, all of our sessions are done over the phone. She's amazing. I think her company now is Career Organic, and you can find her on LinkedIn. But she was amazing. She was really helpful in rewriting my resume. Once I started working with her, I started getting those interviews, and she was really the one that was like, "You're not entry level. Don't settle for entry level." And so it was kind of like, I let the early searching hit my confidence. So once I started working with her, I got a lot more interviews. But again, like once you get in there, and I did interview prep with her, but again, it was like they saw that gap and that's all they saw.
That was just like crazy. I don't think there should be that like weird stigma of a gap. Like I took a gap. Okay. Like life happens and now I'm back. So I don't think it should be
And I learned a lot
crazy.
in that
Yeah.
time off. Like I learned something about perseverance and advocating for yourself and all these things that don't necessarily translate. And so working with Briar was really key because it was really hard. It's always hard to your ego, and job hunting is awful. But she would say, you don't want to work for somebody like that anyway. So you hold your head high. And so she was really awesome. And I credit a lot of how I got to where I got, or where I am now, to like all the tools she gave me. But yeah, so I got so frustrated. I was just like, I didn't even care in interviews anymore. They'd be like, why you have a gap? I'm like, well, I had hip surgery and it didn't go so well, and I had a
Yeah.
toddler. What do you want? Like, what do you want from me?
Yeah.
So I would try, I don't, maybe it wasn't super professional, but I was just trying different angles. Like I tried giving the vague answer, like, well, because, my family required, or like, I don't know, Briar gave me something to say that was vague, but people didn't care. And then I was like, fine, whatever. You know what? I had hip surgery and I had a baby, and then I had hip surgery, and my husband's in the army and he's getting out, so I need to work.
Yeah.
And so I'll never forget this one bad interview. It was a Friday, and it was the weekend of Jack's 4th birthday party, and my family was coming into town, and they were going to meet me at the mall, which was like right near where my interview was. And this guy basically wrote me off. Like, and then I had to sit there though and answer some questions, and he was just like, "You're an introvert, I can tell." And I was just like, okay. And he's like, if you had to pick between going to a party and reading a book, what would you pick? And I think I already know the answer. And I was just like, well, I would take a book to the party and read in the corner and be one. But he basically was like, I don't think you're cut out for this job. So, and then he made me answer questions for like another 20 minutes. It was horrible. I went to my car and cried.
I don't blame you. Like that's yeah. Just off of your resume, you just like made that like quick assumption, or like just like the fact to talk
I
to
think
you.
so. Yeah, just super quick because I passed the phone screen and the first initial was someone else, and then he came in and he's like, I don't think you can do this job. And I was just like, okay. So I remember I went home and made cupcakes, and the icing, I did galaxy icing, and it wasn't working, and I just like threw it in the sink. I was like, I can't make icing, I can't get a job, and like the stupid cupcakes. And my husband's like, it's not about the icing. I'm like, it is about the icing. So then I want to say a few weeks after that, I found this job really randomly, like on Glassdoor, and I applied to it. I had the interview. I really didn't know how it went. Like my husband was asking me like, how did it go? I'm like, I really have no idea. Like I couldn't get a good read and whatever. And then I think that 2 days later, the HR person called me for references. So I sent my references, and then by that Friday I had an offer.
That's awesome.
So it was crazy. And I got more than what I was aiming for, determining my range with Briar. Like that was another good thing. She was like, what is your worth? And like, what is the least that you will take, like your minimum to make this worth it, and then what you're worth. And so we came to a number together. So it was actually more, I was on the highest end of my range, and I took the job and it was great. And then about, I don't even know, 6 months in, they were migrating from Marketo, their email, to Salesforce Marketing Cloud, and they needed help on the email side because I was just a digital benchmark, kind of help with web updates, kind of just helping everybody really, you know, it wasn't entry level, but it, you know, it wasn't anything super complex. So they're like, well, we're going to post the position if you don't want it, but just in case you want to focus solely on email, this is open. So I was like, sure, why not? I basically had to ramp up on Salesforce Marketing Cloud, which is a really complex email marketing platform.
I've heard. I've been email marketing for like 5 years, and I've never done Salesforce, so I've heard it's intense. So
it is intense, and it's a nonprofit, so it's not exactly what you would think. It's so robust. You can do so much with it, but it's such a big tool. But the reason they wanted it is because we're on Salesforce. Everything, our IT team are like Salesforce's biggest cheerleaders, and they're like, "This is gonna be great." And we're like, okay. And I really didn't know any better. I was just kind of going along. But then I was like, oh, I don't know. So yeah, I kind of took off running with that. And yeah, that's kind of where I am now. So
that's awesome. Like, that's really cool that you like saw that you, I think, needed someone else to step in to kind of like a career coach. And to actually show yourself, okay, yeah, that's like, this is the worth that I deserve. Especially I think as women, I don't know how it is for you, obviously, but I think in my experience in marketing, I mean, there's some women, but I think a lot of like higher ups have been men. And so it's been hard to like find a mentor in that way. So I think that's an awesome resource that you're able to like seek out, that like obviously highlights like, okay, like you can ask for what you're worth and like not settle for entry level. Because I definitely have experienced that when I was like just coming out of college.
Yeah.
I was like, I worked all through college. Like I don't need, I think I ended up making $15 an hour at first. And I was like, I have a degree. Like I don't.
Yeah. Like what I spend all this money for?
Yeah, exactly.
Especially when I did the certificate, like, and I really loved that program at Georgetown. It was great. You know, it was geared for working professionals that were trying to either change careers or had that gap. And like, I put my own money into that program.
Yeah.
And, you know, I did it on weekends. And so just like, wait a minute, no, I have a college degree and I did this program that I paid for. Like, yeah.
That's awesome. What kind of are your roles now? Are you solely over email marketing?
Yeah, so I guess right now, when I was hired, I was a digital engagement specialist, and now I am a senior digital engagement specialist. So right now, my role really pivoted, and it pivoted hard. Like you know, like that meme that has the car, and it's like what I thought 2020 was gonna, like, you know, or it has the car like veering off, like that. That was me in this job. Yeah, I took a hard pivot, and even in my own functional team. And I very quickly realized that I was having to learn a technical platform. I was good at it. I was doing it, and I was not doing what I was hired to do. And I wasn't being paid for what I was currently doing. So I had to, again, advocate for myself and negotiate higher pay.
That is awesome.
Yeah. And again, like, because I had that foundation that Briar gave me, I knew. And I had conversations with her. I called her again. I was like, Briar, I need your help.
Yeah.
And I'm really lucky because this is the first marketing department where our department is mostly women. We only have 2 men in our whole department of marketing. So I actually found, like, in my department, like, kind of a mentor, and she also helped me like build a case, told me about resources I could use. So right now I do a lot of like the administration with Marketing Cloud. You know, I can still build emails. I troubleshoot when someone's like, hey, Outlook is saying replies are undeliverable to our emails in the testing. Like, can you see what's going on? Like, I troubleshoot all that deep stuff with Marketing Cloud. I do journeys. I do documentation. I don't train so much anymore. It's not my favorite. So I was like, I don't like to do this. So at the time I was like, I honestly don't get paid to do this part.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but no, it was great because it's always about like, where are you most comfortable? I was like, I'm really not comfortable training. I can train, but I'd rather not. So I do a lot of like, setting when someone needs a new sender profile request, or there's issues with Marketing Cloud. What's going on? Why doesn't this work? I do a lot of those more long-term technical projects now. And occasionally I'll be like, give me an email. I need something like fun and easy to do.
That's really cool. I'm part of Lean In. I don't know if you know Lean In.
Yeah, I've heard of it.
Okay. Yeah. Obviously there's so many studies that like talk about how women don't advocate for themselves, especially when it comes to compensation. And like, obviously we know that women are undercompensated. So I think it's so good that you did that. Like, I've tried to do that so many times in like my careers, and like I'll get like a little bit of a bump sometimes, but other times I haven't. And so I think I guess I just want to let people know that they need to do that. They need to advocate for themselves.
Yes, because no one is going to do it for you. And even then, like, I had to beat down the door. Like, I got told no at first. Like, well, you're not there yet. And I was just like, okay, well, then what do I need? Well, you need a little bit more time to do this. Like, okay, but I'm the only one who can do this, or I'm the one who understands this tool. And I will say that there's this organization called 81 Cents that is for women that does a market evaluation of your role, and they will have outside reviewers review your role, review what you do, review your compensation, and not just money, but like your time off, your bonuses, if you get bonuses. And they give you like a report. It's like a whole PDF report. And I will say mine was $8,000. The average was $8,000 over what I was being paid. So I took that report when I asked the second time, and I was like, in addition to everything I've also documented, all my accolades, here's this market report. I should be making X, and I'm making Y. Yeah. And I think without that report, without that confidence from Briar, I wouldn't have gotten what I got in the end. And I did get what I asked for.
That's awesome.
So
that's a really great resource too. I didn't know about that. That's awesome to know. Yeah. I'm going to use that at some point in my career, I know. So that's awesome. So what are some hurdles that you've kind of overcome choosing, I guess, doing that pivot to digital marketing? And then what are your long-term kind of like plans for your career?
So I think a lot of the obstacles I had to overcome were probably just like self-inflicted. Like I mentioned, like I didn't have a mentor. I didn't know the importance of it. I didn't have a lot of examples. So like realizing that I needed to either find a mentor or someone who could help, that was huge. So like finding Briar was just like, seriously, that's like the best thing I've ever done. And so she really helped me overcome. And a lot of it was just, I think, my own insecurities, with like that, I was hung up on that gap, and it really did hinder me when I was going back to work. But I kind of was letting it define me instead of letting my accomplishments and my abilities define me. So that's a really big one. I think also has been like advocating for myself has been an obstacle that I'm a lot better at now, only because I've had to do it. And I guess that's the only way you get better at it.
Okay, I guess we can wrap up. I feel like I've taken so much of your time. I really appreciate it. This has been really great. Is there anything else you'd like to add, I guess particularly to like the Latino community, like any advice you'd have career-wise?
Yeah, I think my biggest one is to get a mentor. They're really, really important. And I think for women especially, I feel like either if it's just like media or whatever, it always kind of like pitting women against each other. And it's just really not the case anymore. I think amongst women our age and younger, some of my best advocates and helping me advocate for myself have all been women. So I think that's really important to build those relationships with women. And don't be afraid to, cultivate those social relationships at work, not just for like that favor you're going to need up against a deadline, but to really have that open conversation about compensation. Like, I am so lucky that I have colleagues that were willing to share their compensation with me and like how it increased over time. So whether it's an official mentor or somebody at work that you just admire and you want to, like, don't be afraid to ask. Like, I talked to a colleague, I was like, hey, can we go get coffee? Can I like pick your brain? And it was uncomfortable for me at first because I'm just a shy person. Like, I'm not really the person to do that, but it's really invaluable. If you need help, like on the career side, like I said, my career coach, Briar, she was amazing. And I'm a little sad I didn't know about that before. But kudos to my male colleague who pointed her out to me. That is also really invaluable. And don't be afraid to call organizations out in a respectful way. Like, I've gone to a few conferences where they like give us feedback, and so I did. I was like, there was a real lack of like female speakers, or you had a lot of female speakers, kudos, but there was maybe like one woman of color. And so, I've gotten a lot more vocal about that, and respectfully, obviously.
Yeah.
And even within my own organization now, we have town halls and they ask questions and ask for feedback. And, I've brought things like diversity up before. Actually, one of my colleagues does it. She's really great. Her name is Danny. She's also Latina, and she is very vocal about that. And so she's given me the courage to also, plus one, like,
yeah,
where are we with that,
So. That's awesome. Okay. Thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome.